He walked into the small, nearly empty grocery store, hoping to grab a quick snack for his son before practice. But something caught his eye, a young cashier trembling as she fumbled with the register. It wasn't just nervousness. It was fear. Real, raw fear. Most people would glance away, but he couldn't. He noticed 3 subtle signs that told him something was very wrong. What happened next would change both their lives forever. Stay with me, because this is a story about courage, compassion, how one act of kindness can light up the darkest moments. Chapter 1. The signs. Mark was a single dad, juggling 2 jobs, school runs, and soccer practice schedules for his 8-year-old son Ethan. Life was already hectic, but it was fulfilling. On one particularly exhausting evening, he decided to stop by a small convenience store near his apartment. Ethan had asked for chocolate milk and a snack, so Mark tried to make it a quick in-and-out trip. That's when he noticed her. The cashier, a young woman in her early 20s, looked pale and distracted. Her hands shook slightly as she scanned items, and she avoided eye contact with anyone who approached the counter. He thought she might just be tired like him. But then he saw the second sign. Whenever her manager came near, she flinched, shrinking into herself as though she could disappear entirely. The third sign was subtle, but impossible to ignore. When the manager barked out instructions, she muttered a barely audible apology, and her eyes welled up. Yet she continued her work as if nothing was wrong. Mark felt a pang in his chest. He had seen fear before, not just nervousness, but the kind of fear that comes from being trapped in a situation where you feel powerless. Mark hesitated, weighing his options. He didn't know this woman, but he couldn't walk away. There was something about the way she carried herself, the invisible weight on her shoulders, that tugged at his instinct to protect. So he did something small, but intentional. He smiled warmly at her, offered a kind word, and struck up a casual conversation while Ethan wandered the store. Her eyes flickered toward him, hesitant, but slowly, a spark of relief appeared. She whispered a small thank you as he handed over the cash. That tiny moment felt like the beginning of something bigger. Chapter 2. Courage and connection. The next day, Mark returned, partly out of routine and partly because he wanted to check on the cashier. Her name was Mia, and she worked long hours at the store because she had no other options. Through fragmented conversations, he learned that her manager was harsh, often humiliating her in front of customers, and threatened her job over minor mistakes. Mark couldn't stand by and watch someone suffer like that. Over the following weeks, he found ways to support her without interfering. He made sure to stop by at times when the store was less crowded, chatted with her about small, safe topics, sometimes even offered to help carry heavy boxes when her shift ended. Slowly, Mia began to trust him. Her fear didn't vanish overnight, but it softened, replaced by cautious hope. One evening, after Ethan's soccer game, Mark saw Mia sitting outside the store, looking exhausted and defeated. He sat beside her, offered her a bottle of water, and asked, "What if you didn't have to be afraid anymore?" She laughed bitterly at first, then shook her head. "I can't just leave. I need this job." Mark thought for a moment, then said something that changed everything. Sometimes courage doesn't mean waiting for things to get better on their own. Sometimes courage means taking the first step, even if it's scary. With Mark's encouragement, Mia applied for another job that paid better and treated employees with respect. The transition wasn't easy. Fear still lingered. But when she finally handed in her resignation, she held her head high. Mark and Ethan were there to cheer her on, not as heroes, but as friends who reminded her of her own strength. Months later, Mark reflected on that day in the store. He realized that the smallest acts of noticing, caring, and showing compassion could transform lives. Mia had gone from terrified and trapped to hopeful and empowered. And for Ethan, it was a living lesson. Kindness and courage have a ripple effect far beyond what we imagine. By the end, the story leaves a strong, inspiring message. Fear can be overcome. And human connections, simple empathy can ignite profound change.